And that's how we'll start off stock taking. How has governance been? How would you rate the governance situation in Nigeria in the last 8 years? But we're not going to start exactly from there. We're going to start off from the government that's going to come in. How should they kick off their own version, or how should they kick off governance as they take their oaths of office come May 29? Then we'll come down to look at the last 8 years. How has it been? But to help us in this conversation, we have Mr. Wale Oluwade, who is the Chief Executive Officer, Growth Masters Consulting. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Nelson.
Let me start off with this one. The video we just watched is a report of the induction organized by the Nigeria Governors Forum for the new governments or governors that are coming in. One of those that was there has served in Nigeria, and now she serves on a global stage. And in her time, Nigeria received debt cancellation under the Obasanjo administration. But see the words she said. What she said to them: avoid debts, pay salaries, or fail. Was that the right thing to say?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree anymore with Dr. Ngozi Okonjo Iweala. Like you said, I mean, she's been here. She's not strange to this environment, you know. And when she was a finance minister, especially under Dr. Jonathan, I remember one of her key challenge was this running battle with state governors, you know, who were saying, don't save, because she did set up the Sovereign Wealth Investment Authority. And two governors particularly stand out, former Governor Adams Oshiomhole for Edo State, Rotimi Amechi, who was then Governor of Rivers State and also chairman of the Governors Forum. They were all over the place saying, no, share the money. We can save the money ourselves, you know. Of course, we know how that played out. No money was saved. The money was frittered away. And so she's not strange to this environment. She knows the mindset of our typical Nigerian politician, elected officials, even appointed officials. You know, go a borrowing. And then, of course, you can't actually see anything concrete on ground for what they've done with these huge sums that they've borrowed, you know. So, and then, of course, a strange phenomenon I've seen lately also is about infrastructure, in inverted commas, you know. So they're building bridges, constructing roads, flyovers, you know, that seems to be the popular one now, you know. But then you forget the key, the basics of governance. I mean, the Constitution lays it out in very simple language. You would need help to actually miss your way as a leader, as a public official, which is the welfare and security of the people. So you create jobs, you give them education, you give them health care, you know, you give them an environment that is safe and secure to live, to do their business, you know. So the failure of governance, actually, I mean, we've always focused essentially on the federal government. I think for me, to a large extent, the states, the subnational entities, you know, have collapsed. There's a semblance of order because you have the state governors going all over the place with sirens and long convoys, you know. But then if you go where the action actually ought to be taking place, that's the local government, it's gone completely, you know. And that is the center of development.
How would that work out? Let me paint this picture. Case in point, the current administration, President Buhari, signed some bills into law, and amongst them is the sort of like moving from the to the concurrent list, from the exclusive list, power and rail transportation. Now, do you think the subnationals would be quick to tap into this and bring it down, as in domesticate it to begin to work their own state? If, as you said, the local government, they're not even allowing the local governments that are theirs to work with to function as they should.
Yeah, I mean, this new constitutional amendment was just maybe a couple of months ago. That was when it was signed. Why did you have to wait? If that was important, why did you have to wait towards the tail end of 8 years? But
is it not better late than never?
Better late than never. But I'm even saying, you know, in my earlier comment, I said there's this undue focus on, I mean, projects, infrastructure. the essence of government, maybe I need to rehash that, it's about people. People has got to be the central point, the focal point of governance. And you have to start from the basis, from the bottom, which is providing essential services for the people. The job of government is not to build infrastructure. I need to say this, I've been here, Mokwe knows, I've said this over and over again. The job of government is not to build infrastructure. If you have excess money and want to do that, fine. But in a situation where you have scarce resources. So what a responsible government does, provide social services, education, healthcare, jobs, decent accommodation, safe and secure environment. Now, so are you saying they don't need infrastructure, Wale? No. Then you partner with private sector. You make your laws, conducive to attract local and foreign investors. They take that burden off you. So you free up resources, to meet the essential needs of the people. Because, Neota, how do you square this circle? President Okonjo wiped off our debt from 36 or whatever to 2 point something when he was living 2007. President Yar'Adua tinkered with it, but still left it at 2.5 by the time he died, unfortunately. President Jonathan did his best, moved that debt to 7.5 billion. Guess what? That debt is way over 100 billion US dollars as we speak. But this is the tragedy. So we have this huge pile of debt. But then look at the stats. 20 million children out of school, 133 million Nigerians living in multi-dimensional poverty. Youth unemployment has never been higher. Inflation, it's not even inflation. You should call it hyperinflation. And I could go on and on and on and on. So the question is, so what did you do with the money? This huge debt, what did you do with it? If you have hospitals, doctors, are threatening to go on strike, they go on strike, you plead with them, they still threaten to go on strike, university teachers are going on strike, and the list goes on. So if we refuse to do the right things, and we refuse to focus on the basics, and we keep chasing these, what I call shadows, or fantasies, we still keep having these problems, going around in circles, as it were.
I'm looking at the words that you've uttered, because I imagine that a number of, state governors must have thought about this. And there are states where they have tried to partner with the private sector in terms of infrastructure. Oftentimes it doesn't come out well, because people too also have a certain perception of what government should be doing and where they think private sector should be involved. For instance, toll is a very big deal in many states. If you're to introduce toll and say people will pay toll on a certain road, they do not see the reason why. But while we can have that conversation, do you think that the problem, comes from where criticism usually comes from? For instance, you say, we can't see anything that you've done with this money. At the same time, you say, oh, no, don't build infrastructure. That's not your business. And infrastructure is where people see what, governments or governors have been doing, or government, because even the federal government included, have been doing with money. That's what they can point to. If you say, oh, we spent it on healthcare, how do you measure indices like healthcare? How do you measure things like education vis-a-vis the monies that are spent on them and vis-a-vis the results, which are usually delayed? They don't show at the time you put in those monies. Looking at the time frame that governors are in office, do you think that's where the challenge lies for a number of governors who think that, look, if I put my money there, at the end of 4 years, if they're asking me, what have I done? What will I say?
Brilliant question, Mahokwe. But you see, that's because the quality of persons we have in manning our institutions, both elected and appointed officials, I'm sorry to say, do not have the requisite competence and understanding of the role of government. Used to global multilateral agencies, UN, World Bank, IMF, used to measure countries based on some of these things, shiny buildings, infrastructure, long bridges, rails and stuff. But then you realize that you could have growth, economic growth, without development. Now, what's development? So they came up with the HDI, Human Development Index, that measures the quality of healthcare, infant maternal mortalities, Nigeria is the highest on both. Access to quality education, Nigeria is the worst. Like I just told you, 20 million Nigerian children out of school, the highest in the world.
Yeah, but we can aggregate that. We can push that down. When we look at how that is broken down, vis-a-vis north and south, or even across different geopolitical zones, the results are different.
But that's still Nigeria. Indeed. Whether it's north or south, it's still Nigeria. They're not Nigeria or Chad, it's still Nigeria. That should actually be a worry, that why should this imbalance be so negatively skewed from one region to the other? And then we hold the leaders of that region, account. But that's a different. I'm addressing this point you raised about because the infrastructure is what people can see. Let me even help you, Maupe. So if you did this infrastructure, how has this level of infrastructural funding or financing, how has it positively impacted on your bottom line? Yeah, this government is business in a different way. So the economic indices, the GDP, has it grown? Has it moved positively? No. Per capital income? No. Ease of doing business? No. See, you're talking about bridges and roads. What about critical sectors like power? I mean, I listened to your guest who did the newspaper review. I mean, 99 shutdowns, grid collapses in how many months? And then 9. You're still queuing in 9 months. You're still queuing, to buy fuel. The refineries haven't worked. So I go back to the point. See, there's this, and pardon me to be a bit, to sound spiritual. Jesus Christ in Matthew 9, I think 35, 36 said, he looked at, the Bible said, he looked at them and he had compassion, because they were weary and scattered like sheep without a shepherd. The basic problem Nigeria has had over the decades is our leaders without compassion. Now, a fanciful word for compassion is patriotism. Patriotism for this country, to put the interest of this country far above every other interest. You're talking about infrastructure. Mark, I will shock you. As of the last time I checked, there are 14,000 abandoned projects all over Nigeria. 14,000. I didn't say 1,000, 14,000. So government officials are quick to get governors and presidents to sign off into these projects because they have an opportunity to steal, to siphon state coffers. Ajaokuta Steel, aluminum smelter, the list goes on. Like I told you,
that might be one. And I really hate to be in a position where I'm playing devil's advocate.
No, you have to.
But
you have to,
that might be one of the reasons. But we do know that in terms of our budgeting process, that has also been a very big problem.
Can't we amend that process? Can't we fix that process?
In such a way that, it mandates somebody who comes after you to finish a project. If the person doesn't share your vision, what do you do? For instance, the rail project started by the the Jonathan administration, some of it were completed by the Buhari administration, and others were started. Now, assuming a government comes in that doesn't share that as a priority, and that is listed as an uncompleted project, would it have been because the Buhari administration or people there wanted to just siphon money?
Yeah, I get your point, but this is the point. If I am president or governor, and I must give credit to President Buhari, because when he came in and he said, no, let's try as much as possible to finish some of these projects, some of the rails, the road. But then the question is, after 8 years, Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, 120 kilometers, Maupe, still uncompleted. I mean, can you explain that to anybody?
It's almost done.
Almost. After how many years? Does it take 4 years to build a 120-kilometer stretch of road, and that road has been under construction from whenever? And you can talk about several others. But, this undue fixation on projects, infrastructure, I am telling you, the role and primary responsibility of government is the welfare and security of the people. And I will repeat, at the risk of sounding like a cracked vinyl: healthcare, education, decent accommodation, safe and secure environment. You could actually go to space and build a space shuttle, whatever. If you don't take care of this, you have failed. See, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo spoke yesterday and said, pay salaries. I mean, governance looks so mundane, but it is in its mundaneness that our people miss it. Because they keep, focusing on some of these, like I said, fanciful things. Do your job as government. You have civil servants, pay them. Those who have retired, pay their gratuities, pay their pensions, pay your teachers, recruit enough doctors, build primary health care, build primary schools, secondary schools, have decent university. See, there was a Mark, you said, how do you measure, if you spend money on social projects, you said, how do you measure it? Mm-hmm. There is a list of 1,000 top universities in the world. No Nigerian university is in the top 1,000 universities in the world. How do you explain that? Top 1,000 universities in the world. There is not a single Nigerian university in that list. How do you explain that?
So in this, which you've said, you've sort of like looked at the focus on infrastructure. You've said, no, that shouldn't be. We should look at healthcare, education, decent accommodation. How would you rate the current administration in the last 8 years? In the different indices you've put out there, healthcare, education, safe environment,
jobs, creation of jobs for the youth. 8 years has been a waste, and I say that trying to be modest. It's been a waste because like I said, the job of a president, and I have come here, I've been guilty, I've come here and spoken directly about the president and exclude the governors. And I know most of the governors will have been, smiling and praising God. Oh, nobody's talking about us, So I talk now about, when I say government, I'm saying federal and state governors, So it's been a waste, actually, because the job of the president is like is a conductor of an orchestra, a class captain, as it were, who sits down with the 36 state governors and say, gentlemen, see, these are the facts of where we are as a nation. We have 20 million youth, children out of school, like Mark said, and Governor Kebbi, Governor Jigawa, Governor Borno, Governor Kaduna Kano. This, I need to see you especially, and then have somebody put up a slide. So you have unemployment, you have primary health care, maternal and infant. So you say to them, these are the issues. These are the things we should focus on, governors. So what are the challenges? Okay, so Mr. President, the law says local governments are this and that. Okay, so we need to go to the Senate, get the Senate to amend the laws to make local government completely autonomous. And like you said, like this, power and the rail that was removed. I mean, if you have a president and governor that are working in sync and who understand their job roles, and not playing to the gallery, not doing stuff to get people in regalias, this funny stuff will gather people, get the TV stations, 5, 10 TV stations, and then splash it all over the place that you're commissioning project. I mean, come on. See, I grew up in the Southwest, Ibadan. I was born and I was raised in Ibadan. I mean, this is not governance. I'm sorry to say, this is not governance. So President Buhari, for me, the 8 years is a waste. And what saddens me the most is that he's piled up over $100 billion in debt that I do not know
that might not
whose generation is going to pay.
That might not be very correct. Going by the debt management office,
what figures do you have?
41 billion.
41 billion.
Over 41 billion.
No, that's
December.
That's not correct. As of March, it was 46. When this 22.7 Ways and Means was approved by the Senate illegally, so to say, converted to loan.
So you're putting it all together, both external and internal debt.
No. Yes, Ways and Means is debt. It's become a debt. So if you put all of this together, over 100 billion, and somebody's got to pay it. The 22.7 trillion Ways and Means converted to debt now has a 40-year tenure. You and I are not going to be here. My daughter and your children are going to need to pay this debt. The people who collected the money and we don't have anything to show, they've all gone. They've bought private jets, they've bought SUVs, their kids are doing whatever in America, buying mansions all over the place, So we can keep playing this game, and fooling ourselves. But fun enough, the rest of the world are not playing games. I listened to Femi Adesina, the essay to the president, each time he comes on here. But this last time he came, I listened to him giving a scorecard for the president. And he said something like, they did a book, just to put a document where everything, the accomplishments. And I don't know who was asking him, so what was the job number? He said 100 and something thousand jobs in 8 years. President Biden in America, in 3.5 years, the government has created 12.5 million jobs in 3.5 years. So if you have appointed or elected officials who don't have any accountability or sanctions for bad governance, for failure, an egregious level of incompetence, you keep going to have this kind of situation we're having. There is no way you square this circle. This is an abysmal failure on all fronts. See, in January to March, we've had 1,258 deaths from bandits, terrorist activities, all kinds of criminal situations in Nigeria. 1,258 deaths. It's over 700 injured and all of that. Every day you check, even on your scroll bar in Nasarawa, 15 people killed and all of that. So when the president came, they said, we're going to do insecurity, corruption, and the economy. What's the result?
Let's take it to Lagos. Our colleagues are standing by and with some questions for you.
Thank you, Nyota. Soluade, to say that you haven't minced words would be very much an understatement, but just to support that aspect of the conversation, it has taken the former Minister of Finance and President of the World Trade Organization, to attend that induction ceremony for governors, to speak some truth to them, that has brought us to where we are, with this platform where we're continuing the conversation. Then what now is the purpose of the induction ceremony if, the governors, the outgoing governors and the incoming governors do not have that kind of truth-telling, amongst themselves where, they can hand over categorical notes, to incoming administrations and say, this is where we're headed. What can we do to achieve some of these tasks that we're setting before them now with this conversation?
Thank you, Bimbo. I think what happened, the induction program is just maybe 30-50% because, like I just told you, a critical component is missing. What's missing in that exercise, which is president-elect to have been part of it, because like I said, the president, is like the conductor of an orchestra or a class captain, a football coach who says, this is how you should go. These are the areas where we're terribly deficient, and these are the priority areas we need to focus on. And let me use this illustration. America is a 22 trillion economy, but guess what? That economy is broken down into the different states in America. California has 3.5 trillion of that 23 overall American economy, followed by Texas, with 2.3 trillion. So what does California do? Services, tech sector, so Silicon Valley and all of that. Then in Texas, it's basically maybe oil, And then you have New York coming in third at about 2.0, 1.9 trillion GDP of the economy of New York, basically financial services. And then Illinois, number 4, and so on. So that is why you need a president to gather these governors together, sit together, so that they are all pulling in the same direction to say, okay, we cannot have 20 million Nigerian children of school-going age out of school. How do we, reduce this on a yearly basis? What are the strategies? What are the solutions, applicable smart goals? And then you put timelines to them. So if the president and governors have to meet on a monthly basis, to review performance, and that also means the president assembles a team of capable people, the governors assembles a team of capable people, and then at the presidential level, you don't appoint people and give them tasks, and then you keep them there. You don't do peer review, you don't do performance monitoring and evaluation, and so you give somebody a job for 8 years, minister for FCT, minister for works and housing, minister for power, just name it. And the country has regressed rather than even stagnate, and you don't fire them. So that part of the conversation I didn't hear, but it was at least good that doctor, maybe if somebody like me had been there to speak to them, they will not take, they'll say, who is this one, who is he? But with the bona fides of somebody like Dr. Ngozi Okonjo Iweala, I was excited when I saw her saying the simple things. Governance is about the basics, the simple things. You see all the big stuff, we keep fixating over. And I'll keep saying it, a governor does all sorts of projects, gather people, waste resources. The resources that could have been used to build or create MSME clusters, industrial hubs, tech hubs, create jobs
do you believe,
for people. Nigerians have gotten, especially our youth population.
If I may come in there, do you believe that party difference in political ideology could be, a sort of a stumbling block to achieving a unified, implementation of human policies and human capital development, and what have you, if we went on in that regard? And apart from that, how do you commit, executives to abiding by their party manifesto in line with what they implement? For instance, we had the crisis with the Naira redesign policy, and the question was, what was in the manifesto, in the APC manifesto, in terms of, economic development? What did it deliver? I wonder if you catch my drift.
I do. Brilliant question again, Bimbo. Now, I don't think there's any party that is against human development, as in eradicating poverty. If you have 133 million of your citizens living in multidimensional poverty, and you need to create jobs for them, provide access to opportunities for them. If you have 20 million people out of school, children of school-going age, I don't think any political party has an issue with this. But then you're right, of course. I mean, our political parties, in any case, do they have any distinct ideologies? The answer is no. But then coming to the issue of how do political parties hold their governments accountable, that's not the job of political parties, I'm sorry to say. That is the job in a democracy. We claim to be a democracy, in my opinion, and not just my own opinion. I mean, there's a democratic index, we're not going into that now. Nigeria is not a democratic society. We don't practice democracy. There is the principle of checks and balances. It is the job of the legislature to hold executive arm of government accountable, to say, no, this is not what you should do. I mean, but if you have if you have a legislature before it comes on board who said from the get-go that whatever comes here, however silly it sounds, is going to pass, then we're going to have the crisis we have on our hands. Sadly, that circus has taken off again. We're in that circus now. People going all over the place wants to be Senate president and speaker and all of that. And even the media, we're not asking them the right questions. Are you fit? Are you a fit and proper person from your antecedents? Or does the executive just want to put you there as a rubber stamp, as a lackey, so that you turn the other way? And of course, they have something on you. So if you don't play ball, they can bring out your files from the anti-corruption agencies and all of that. So the job of ensuring the executive arm of government, either at the federal or state levels, do their jobs, deliver on their mandates, is that of the legislature. Well, that is what a democracy guarantees.
Perhaps we just have to expect that this new crop of legislators will do their jobs. There's a conversation with them later on this morning. But, there was a figure you gave the other time, which in perhaps adding to it, you might be a little shocked. You gave a figure of 14,000 abandoned projects. Well, the CIPM says there are 56,000 abandoned projects all across Nigeria, and which that's according to the CIPM, which the Institute of Quantity Surveyors valued at 12 trillion naira, and that's over the past 20 years. CIPM also said that in Bayelsa State alone, there are 1,700 NDDC abandoned projects. Bayelsa alone, NDDC alone, 1,700 abandoned projects. The question around that is along the line of anti-corruption. You said something the other time that some people will just make some propositions to whoever, and then they will come up with the idea to say, you know what, let's do it. And then along the line, it gets abandoned. So in terms of anti-corruption, do you see, let's just focus on infrastructure. How well would you say we even made any attempt at fighting corruption, especially in the area of infrastructure, particularly and specifically speaking to the abandoned projects that we have had? Because more than once, a number of people will say there are some budgets that have been given to some projects, but they never see the light of day. What do you make of that, particularly in the area of infrastructure?
Thank you, Ayo. I mean, I love this question. The anti-corruption mantra of this administration, is just what it is, just a mantra. It's got no soul, no life, and nothing better encapsulates that than the way the former EFCC czar, was kicked out of office in a gale, embroiled in a gale of, the loot recovered, the custodian of that loot also was alleged anyway to have re-looted and all of that, and a probe panel was set up, and we never saw the outcome of that probe panel, and then he's out of office and all of that. And then, of course, you also remember the case of the former Accountant General Idris Ahmed, 109 billion naira alleged to have been stolen or diverted, or and the last I heard about that case, at the next adjourned case, the statement, a key statement, the former AGF made couldn't be found in the file. So that basically summarizes our attitude to anti-corruption. And it boils down to weakness. A complete erosion of the independence of state institutions, and I've advised or canvassed elsewhere that until we have institutions that are truly independent of political interference, so for instance, EFCC, ICPC, the heads of those agencies should never be appointed, by the president. They should be independent. Anyway, so coming to the issue of projects, and Ayo, you touched on something very key. The NDDC alone in Bayelsa has over 1,000 projects. Guess what? The man who wants to be Senate president was chairman of the board of NDDC. And even then, I remember the MD then and himself had this public face-off, throwing allegations and counter-allegations. So we have a long way to go, and that's why I will keep saying it. In this environment, if we build our cash reserves, we have money and all of that. Yeah, governments, can, fund infrastructure, but we don't have the resources. We're spending 96% of our revenues to service debt. So we do not have money to even talk about building projects or whatever. Whatever money we can raise, is to take care of social issues, education, healthcare, creation of decent housing, provision of security, and then, of course, catalyzing SMEs, incubation and all of that. So we need an audit of all these 56,000 plus abandoned projects ASAP. The new government needs to do a forensic audit of these 56,000 abandoned projects all over Nigeria. And whoever is found culpable, whoever is fingered to have, held positions and misapplied or mismanaged or stolen or diverted funds should be held accountable. Part of the big, problem we have as a nation is a lack of sanctions or accountable. And that's why I said we don't practice democracy, because democracy, though, could be cantankerous, it could be difficult, but it's got safeguards. Part of the safeguards, like I said, is checks and balances. And, people, if democracy does not have anything, it guarantees accountability and sanction. So if you have people commit heinous crimes against the state and they just walk away with it, no sanctions, and then they show up after 5 years to want to be governor, want to be president, or want to be Senate president, you cannot grow a society in that manner. I'm sorry to say, Ayo.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wale Oluwade, for coming in this morning. But just before we let you go, you've talked about what the incoming administration should do. Particularly, let's look at the area of education and housing. What would you say they should do real quick in like 10 seconds?
Education should be priority. Poverty eradication, using education as a kickstart, that should be priority. And when I'm talking about education, I'm talking about primary education, universal access to primary, secondary education. We can have a debate about university education, but if you don't educate your people, you're already programmed to fail. Basic.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Oluwade is the Chief Executive Officer of Growth Masters Consulting, and we were talking about assessing the governance level of the current administration and a word of advice for the incoming administration. So.